So, what happens when a government's desire to protect kids online crashes right into the very idea of a free and private internet? Well, in the UK, we're watching that fight play out right now, and believe me, it has turned into one of the biggest digital battlegrounds anywhere in the world.
And no, that's not an exaggeration. It's real. Thanks to something called the Online Safety Act, regular adults are now being told they need to show government ID or even get their face scanned just to read the news, watch parliamentary debates, or look at classic paintings. This is the new reality, and the stakes could not be higher.
Okay, so how on earth did we get here? Well, it all kicked off with a goal that, honestly, almost nobody would disagree with: protecting children from harmful stuff online. That was the big, noble idea that started this whole thing.
And this quote right here, it just perfectly nails the tightrope any government is on. Right? How do you shield one group without taking away the rights of everybody else? The Online Safety Act is it's a fascinating and, for a lot of people, a really scary example of a government trying to walk that line.
This was the grand vision, the big promise they sold to the public. Super ambitious. And hey, on the surface, who wouldn't want that? The real problem, as we're about to see, isn't about the intention. It's all about how they tried to do it, and the chaos that followed. So to make the UK the safest place online, the government decided to use one main weapon: mandatory age checks for any content that they decided might be harmful. And this is the exact point where this big political idea slams into your everyday internet use. The official term for this is age assurance. It sounds kind of harmless, but it can mean a couple of different things. It might mean you have to take a picture of your driver's license and upload it to some company you've never heard of. Or it could mean you have to let an AI scan your face and literally guess how old you are. Both are now being used to lock away perfectly legal content. So what does this actually feel like for you, the user? Well, it's pretty simple, and for a lot of us, kind of creepy. You click a link to an article, maybe a video, and bam! You hit a digital wall, and now you have to choose: either hand over your private personal data or just be blocked from seeing something totally legal for adults. And, this system immediately created a massive problem because the companies hosting this content are terrified of getting hit with enormous fines from the regulator, Ofcom. So they didn't just block the obvious stuff. They started over-blocking, just aggressively banning anything that could possibly be seen as risky. And that, my friends, leads to a whole lot of accidental censorship. Now, to be fair, the regulator, Ofcom, was really clear in their official rules. They said platforms had to protect things like journalism and content that was, in their words, of democratic importance. They promised that free speech was a top priority. But the reality on the ground? Oh, it was a completely different story. In just the first few days, platforms were blocking everything from BBC News reports about war zones to speeches that were literally made inside Parliament. They even blocked articles from digital rights groups that were criticizing the law itself. The irony is just staggering. So people in the UK are suddenly facing all these new digital walls. What do you think they did? Just give up? No way! They immediately found a super simple technical key to unlock all the gates: the VPN. Just look at this number. 1,400%. And get this, that 1,400% spike wasn't over a month or a week. It was for just one VPN company in the first few minutes after the law took effect. It just goes to show how fast and how angry the response was. People wanted their internet back. And if you're not totally sure what a VPN is, don't worry. It's actually pretty simple. It's just a tool that hides your real location online. It can make it look like you're browsing from New York instead of London. And if you're not in the UK, well, the Online Safety Act doesn't apply to you anymore. Simple as that. But of course, the story doesn't end there. When the regulators saw that hundreds of thousands of people were just walking around their new law, they didn't stop and think, maybe the law is the problem. Nope. They started talking about banning the workaround. This is a direct quote from England's Children's Commissioner, who is a huge supporter of the law. She went on record calling VPNs an obvious loophole that had to be closed. She was basically calling for a ban on the very tools people were using to protect their privacy and access legal information. And this is where it gets really complicated. You'd think the public would be outraged, right? Well, a poll from YouGov found that 55% of people in the UK actually support banning VPNs for kids. It just shows how powerful that protect the children argument is, even if the solution creates a whole new set of problems. But critics, of course, pushed back immediately and hard. As one creator, the Curl King, put it, this has stopped being about safety
It's just become about more censorship and more policing of what everyone, adults included, is allowed to see online.
For a lot of people watching this, it has some seriously alarming echoes of the past. They compare it to the Patriot Act in the US, which was rushed through after 9/11 in the name of national security. But really, it just opened the door to massive government surveillance. The fear is the same. You pass a law to protect people from one thing, and it ends up becoming a tool to control everyone. So all of this leaves the UK stuck between a rock and a hard place. The government's big, flagship laws being completely bypassed, their idea for a fix is sparking even more outrage, and that core conflict between protection and freedom, it's nowhere near being solved.
And it's really important to know that the critics aren't just saying this is bad and walking away. They're actually suggesting a whole bunch of other ideas. Things like, hey, what about better parental controls that are just built into our phones? Or what about new technologies that can prove you're an adult without you having to show your ID? Or maybe we should focus more on teaching kids how to navigate the internet safely instead of just trying to block everything.
But while all the politicians and the experts are having these big debates, the actual people using the internet, well, they're not waiting for a solution. They are getting busy fighting back in some of the most creative and, honestly, hilarious ways imaginable.
I mean, it's become a total cat and mouse game. People figured out you could trick the face scanning AI with video game characters. Someone made a website that generates fake IDs with the faces of UK politicians on them. One guy famously passed the age check while wearing a latex zombie mask. And then you have huge American sites like 4chan basically just telling the UK government no, citing their free speech rights.
And that all brings us back to the one massive question at the center of all this. In the mission to make the online world safer, where is the line? At what point does a government's desire to protect its people cross over into a desire to control them? That's the question the UK is wrestling with right now, and whatever they decide, it's going to shape the future of the internet for everyone.